Is it time for the Bermuda government to control the police service instead of the governor? That idea has been floated by a visiting law professor who feels it may be the right time for Bermuda to revisit its constitutional arrangements with the mother country. But as Tarai Todd reports, there remains fears that government control over the police force could lead to corruption.
The 1968 Bermuda Constitution, a landmark document that gave fundamental rights to all for the first time, including human rights and the right to an equal vote. However, the British ensured the document empowered only the governor to run the island's police force, a control that remains today 50 years later.
This is also an issue of fairness.
But the current arrangement, in which the Bermuda government is merely responsible for funding, resources and training, while the governor who represents the UK retains operational control, has long been a point of contention between premiers and governors. Lawyer Nicola Barker is an expert on the Bermuda Constitution and is based at the University of Liverpool. She was in Bermuda recently to support the Constitutional Conference organized by the Center for Justice, and she agrees that Bermuda should control its police force and not the governor.
Bermuda is quite capable of running its own police service, and there are other mechanisms that the UK could have in place, constitutional mechanisms, that would provide the backstop necessary for the UK to satisfy itself that it still was able to ensure good governance in Bermuda. So I'm talking about things like the governor's powers not being to directly control the police service, but rather the governor's power being a limited one to step in if there is evidence of corruption or that the rule of law is not being abided by.
One of the fears of conservative constitutional backers is a government of the day interfering with a police investigation for political purposes, a form of corruption that presently is precluded by vesting the day-to-day running of the police force into the hands of the Queen's representative here. But Ms. Barker, who supports constitutional reform, believes the idea of direct UK control over the police is outdated.
The UK controls its own police force, right? So what would happen in the UK if there were concerns about potential corruption in the police force? We don't have another country with oversight over that, just in case, there's corruption.
The constitutional expert believes Bermuda may want to consider having a similar arrangement to the Crown Dependency Islands of Guernsey, Jersey, and the Isle of Man, where locals run the police force.
From a legal point of view, there's no reason why similar mechanisms that exist in the UK to prevent corruption couldn't be implemented in Bermuda, with an additional backstop that the governor retains the power to step in if those mechanisms fail.
Ms. Barker said Bermuda may want to look at the constitutions of other countries as examples that can be implemented here.
When they introduced the Bermuda Constitution, the UK very much expected that this would be a pre-independence constitution and that Bermuda would fairly quickly afterwards become independent.
But independence never arrived, and 50 years later, Bermuda continues to operate under the same arrangement, while other overseas territories have been allowed significant constitutional advancement in recent times. Elsewhere, the recent disagreement between the governor and the government over the governor's decision to hire a non-Bermudian police commissioner is a case in point, says Ms. Barker.
And I think it is appropriate to ask, why does the governor have the power to appoint the police commissioner?
And reacting to our story, a spokesperson for Government House told us, quote, in line with principles of good governance, decisions on operational policing matters are the responsibility of the Commissioner of Police. Beyond that, under Section 22 of the Constitution, the governor has overall responsibility for the police. The quote continues, in exercising that responsibility, he works closely with the Minister for National Security and the Commissioner of Police.